So that's loaded now, and I'm going to try this. That's maybe a wee bit too strong, so some more water just to weaken it. If it's too strong, don't persevere with it. Fix it before you, it's better there. And this is going to be slightly different in color, because it can be. And I'm working it around this tree. This is going to be a lovely light green tree in the foreground. See the granulation? Perfect. And that only happens if you have a heavy pigment, a heavy weight pigment, and a lightweight pigment together. And alizarin crimson is made from the bark of a little bush like berberis, and cerulean blue is made from a very heavy rock. So those two things go together, one sinks and one floats, and what you get is texture like that, and that's perfect. You couldn't want for better than that. And I'm just going to take this yellow or green here again, a little bit, not too much, and I want to put some of this just into the edge of that as well. Right, I'm going to start with this tree on the right hand side, just above the house, just above the shed, and I'm going to try and tighten this in a bit so that you can see this in as much detail as I can show it to you. There, that's fine. I want you to see how it cuts around this tree in the foreground. And I'm going to load this brush up and set it right into the middle of that tree. There we go. Now, I'm going to use the side of the brush as if I'd picked it up from the table. Look, this is a different way to hold the brush. It's in a flat hold. So I'm holding it with no fingers on one side, so that whenever I turn it round, I can drag it against the rough surface of the paper. You see, I haven't touched the paper. So I'm going to let it down really, really slowly to try and get some kind of a crescent shape on the top of this tree. A rough, broken outline. If I go a wee bit bigger than I've drawn the tree, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just pulling across like that. Now, when I'm coming from the right, I must come in from the right. When I'm coming from the top, I must come in from the top. And when I'm coming from the left, I must come in from the left. You have to turn around so that you're always coming from the outside in. I'm dragging that down, but don't drag when you get close to the chimney, because the chimney must be kept clear. That has given me a sort of a rough shape. It's not the finished shape of the tree, it's a rough shape. So now I'm going to put this wash around everything. This is the same wash over and over again. I'm just going to fill this space, but I'm going to cut neatly around my chimney. I can't lose my chimney, otherwise it's gone. But at the same time, I can't lose this tree either. So this is all very, very wet. You see that? And if I worked with dry brush there, by the time I fiddle down here, that's all dry, so I can't bleed anything into it. So I'm going to try and work around the edge here, but think about up here as well. I'm painting down at the bottom, but I'm thinking about up at the top. So never lose your concentration, that you forget about any particular area. Look, this is wet. Wet, 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 wet. Wet, wet, wet. Who were they? Now, I'm going to try and push out here at the top to give a sort of a leafy effect. There, trying to get a shape. I'm always trying to bear in mind the shape of a tree, because once you lose the shape, well, it doesn't look like a tree anymore. This is all wet. And you know the way a tree hangs down on the left and the right? Look, it's hanging down to the left, and it's also hanging down to the right, because the weight of the foliage is pulling it down. But don't let it get too big. The most common problem that people have is that they let their trees get far, far too big and they're out of proportion. Now, I'm going immediately into this dark wash here. I'm going to pull that across, and I'm going to put there. What do you think of that? Isn't that a lovely happy tree? So if that bleeds too far, well then it's too wet. So it's not bleeding at all. The light is on the top here, up on the top, coming from here. So try and concentrate your darkness mostly towards the left and the underside. But there's plenty of darkness up here at the top as well, but not as much as there is at the bottom. Those eyes will disappear now in a wee minute. I'm just going to turn this brush on its edge again. It's a very big tree. Big trees are scary. But you see the way it's coming together, look. I'm getting a diffusion between light and dark. Oh, I must say hello to John Seedon tonight. John has been at a few workshops that I've been doing down in Faversham. John's from Gillingham. And John's joining us tonight for the first time. So John, you're very, very welcome. And delighted to have you on board. How are things down in Gillingham? I haven't been down there now from, gosh, it was the start of the year. I was down in Selling, doing a 3-day workshop in Selling Village Hall. And the weather was lovely, but it was very cold. I did a lot of walking when I was there. Look at that. You see the way that is all sort of bled together? You've got a nice variegation going on there, but we have no darks in yet. Now watch this. This is the very dark wash. Look, really dark, really scary. But I must offload this brush at the darkest part of the tree. And the darkest part of the tree is against the lightest part of the tree that's in front of it and the lightest part of the chimney. So you see the way that dark is going in there first while the brush is loaded. And now I'm going to radiate that out. And along the top of this roof, this will push this barn forward and push the tree back. You see the way the barn comes forward and the tree goes back. But don't bring the dark too far out to the right hand side because that's the light side. I'm just going to radiate this out and up now because there's lots of little holes for the birds to fly through. So let's put those in here and there, but they're not as concentrated as they were down there. See the way that's all coming together. And now just before I go any higher, I want to take some of that dark off, just very gingerly. I'm not taking it all off. Just I want to make a few holes there for the birds, but not so big, not so plentiful. And then once I get a few more of these on, I'm going to dry the brush completely and I'm going to start to diffuse some of this. But look, that big tree is just so massive and so full. So I'm taking the tissue and I'm just pulling the brush through the tissue to take all of the colour out actually. And with what's just the dry brush, I'm going to bounce it along here, and that's going to diffuse some of these colours in the lighter part of the tree. Now this is a dark tree, so there's not an awful lot of light in it, but there's some. I'm going to make a few leafy bits there as well. Make it as natural as possible. See the leaves? But feathery, feathery, feathery around the outside. We can pick up some of that darker, wetter stuff there and just fill out to the left hand side here. But watch the chimney. Be careful with the chimney. You don't want to lose it. That chimney is sitting pretty and proud in there. I'm also going to say hello to Peter McNulty from Sion Mills near Strabane in Northern Ireland. So Peter, you're very welcome. You've been a regular of the last few weeks. Another regular is Bernadette Skerritt, and Bernadette is from down in Newbridge in County Kildare. And if you've ever heard of Newbridge silver, anybody that's watching, Newbridge silver is a really, really special silver jewellery and little ornaments that they have made in County Kildare, and it's world famous now. It's as famous as Waterford crystal. Now, what do you think of that tree? Isn't that amazing? So you don't want to do anything more to it. That'll dry out a wee bit later, but look, it has left this here so white now against that tree. Whenever we put a light tree in here, it's really going to stand out against that dark one. Let me see what this looks like. I'm just going to set it in the tree and judge it that way. So I'm going to pop it down there. That's lovely. That's light. Maybe, you know, I'm always saying that's lovely and then changing it. I'm going to make it a wee bit more yellow. Just because I can. Let's try it again. There. It's a little bit lighter. So I want this really to sing in front of that other tree. So get it as close as I can without touching the other one, because it will, if you touch the other one, it'll pull it in like it was a bleeding wash, because the capillary action will just suck it into it. So tighten that. There we go. Is that back in focus? It is. It's just my hand moving about, put it out of focus. So there we go. I'm just going to fill this quickly as I can with the first wash. And this is wet, wet, wet. Really, really wet. Don't do this with a dry brush, otherwise you'll have no time to get the second and third wash in. And the second and third wash are common. They're common to every tree. So it's the same second and third wash that I used for those two trees there. You don't need to mix anything new. It's just back into the same second wash and the same third wash. It's only the first wash ever changes in foliage. So I'm blocking that down here. So you're not going anywhere tonight anyway, so we'll just keep at this here to have it finished. It's not far away anyway. Now, this is the first wash on and wet, but I haven't taken it right to the edge there at the top because I don't want to run the risk of bleeding that in. So I'm just going to let that stay like that for a minute. And I'm going to take off the excess wash on the brush, and I'm going straight over here to the second wash. This is the common wash. And this is going to drop in there. Look, I don't want too much of this now, so I'm taking some of that off on the edge of the tissue. Not as much as I put into the last tree, because I don't want this tree to get as dark. So just keep judging. That's lovely. And I'm going to pump this in at the bottom and on the left hand side first. And the bottom doesn't just mean the bottom of the tree, it means the bottom of each wee overhanging bit as well. So there's a bottom there, and there's a bottom here, and there's a bottom there, and there's a bottom down here, and there's a bottom there. You see that? Look, and there's a bottom there. So that's all the bottoms of the little blocks. Now you can see how I'm not putting so much of this in as I did the last time, because I want that tree to be lighter. Into the dark wash now. And again, lift it carefully. I'm going to be very, very careful with this. That's too much, so I'm taking off some of that. I don't want to overkill it. There we go, that's lovely. So now pumping this in on the bottom edges of all of those sections. But you have to think of the shape of the tree as well. So I'm going to be pushing it out and up. Can you see how that's creating form? The tree is round, look. It's round like that. It's not round like this. Right? It's not round like that. It's round like that. Up and over, not down and under. So whenever you're trying to create roundness with something like a tree that's above your eye view, your eye line, it's up and over. Now I need to just push that yellow out into the space. So I'm drying the brush, and I'm just going to push this yellowy colour up now as far as I can. This is why it's best to wait and don't take chances with the drying wash, because you're asking for trouble if you do. You see that wee line that I've left? I can fill that at the end at any time after it's dry. But the havoc that wash there would cause if it bled down into that tree wouldn't be worth the chance that you're taking. So just give yourself a few minutes. I'm just going to put in a few more subtle shadows here, just in the lower edges of that foliage there. There we go. That's fine. I'm just going to pull out to let you see that tree.